Hello, my lovelies, and welcome to episode 53 of the Prosperous Yogini podcast. And I'm very excited, trying to contain myself because you won't be able to see on YouTube. We've had this discussion before I hit record, but there are 5 people with me here today at my podcast party. So I'm not recording my episode by myself, which is super exciting. And people have submitted some questions. So today's podcast episode is marking the first year anniversary of my podcast. I'm on episode 53. So I had debated whether I should do 52 or 53 as a birthday, but 53 is a birthday party. This podcast has been going for a year. And what I want to say to all of you guys, whether you're here live with me on the call or listening on the replay as a podcast, this podcast is a wonderful example of practice, consistent practice. And as a yoga teacher or a yoga practitioner, because Rachel, who's here, isn't a yoga teacher, but has benefited from the podcast, which I'm very excited to talk about in a moment, that we know in our yoga practice, if we want to achieve results, for want of a better word, then that comes from consistent in practice. It doesn't come from me thinking, oh, I'd really like to improve my mental well-being and then not doing anything to improve my mental well-being. It comes from coming to the mat, consistent practice. And that's what I've done with this podcast. I literally have just gone, I don't care. And this is really important, guys. I don't care how many of you listen. Like I am not doing this for anything other than to share my knowledge and to help people and be completely in this place of faith that if I show up every week and practice and record my podcast, that it will grow over time. And that has completely proved that to me. I've not got massive podcast numbers. We're about 4,000 downloads. Average podcasts or download now is about between 60 and 70. And that's grown massively from when I first started, trust me. And it makes me excited to see what the road ahead for this podcast is. But I'm talking about my podcast. If I take this to any aspect of your yoga business, any aspect of your life, sometimes we just have to be in for the long game. I've been saying this a lot, but especially to the guys in my mentorship program, you've got to sit in it for the long game. When we look at someone like me and think, oh, we've got all this stuff that Amy's got, Amy must be special. Amy has been teaching for 14 years. Amy has got so many things wrong. Amy has had times where she's like, yeah, I definitely need to go and get a real job, or why am I doing this? Or had those really dark moments where I've felt like I put my family and stuff at risk, because I'm self-employed and I generate my own money. And I just know from 14 years of this game, and my podcast has just reminded me of this. If you go, I am passionate about this. This is what lights me up. And this kind of links into Rachel's comment. This is what I love to do. This is what I'm good at. The podcast, I think I've shared this before, but I've got a really lovely friend who's got a very successful business out of the yoga industry, which can really help sometimes to just step out of the yoga world and get some advice sometimes. And she's got a very successful product-based business. And she just turned around to me one night. I was driving her home. I hadn't drunk. She wasn't drunk, but she'd had too many drinks to drive home. I have to always clarify this so I don't make it out to be an alcoholic. But she was so mildly tipsy, let's say. And she just turned around and she said, Amy, you can talk without swearing, SH for Britain. She's like, why don't you start a podcast? And I was like, I did start a podcast because I do really love talking. I'm not a big fan of writing. I find copy and creating websites and blog posts and even social media posts, it takes me a lot of effort. The podcast takes me no effort at all, other than just making sure Pancake comes in time to scratch the carpet and get comfy under my chair. Then literally I'm off. I'm one take wonder on this podcast. I mean, you're meant to batch your podcast episodes to record several in advance. And I did try that when I first started out. And actually, it didn't really work for me. I'm so much better responding to what's coming up energetically for me, which is why I love it when guys ask me questions, because it gives me a focus and I'm off. So it's just an example of doing what you love, utilizing your skills, and we've all got some unique skills. So if you're looking at me thinking, I just couldn't do this, Amy, I couldn't do a podcast, I'm like, fine, don't. I bet there's something you can do that I really just couldn't do. Honor your uniqueness, do what lights you up, And you stay in that vibration, you stay in that energy, and over time, not overnight, over time, momentum builds and things start to shift. So like I can see now from my podcast that everything in terms of my marketing endeavors is getting so much easier. Like people are finding me, people are coming to me and buying my training programs, and they're finding me through my podcast. People are coming, my mentorship program, which I started a year ago as well, at first was like swimming through mud trying to convince yoga teachers that this was a good idea. And now people who are coming into my mentorship program, the vast majority of the people who've been consistently listening to my podcast for some time have felt like they've got a relationship with me, understand how I work as a mentor, and want me on their team. At the same time, it's helped people decide maybe that they don't want me to be their mentor. They've listened to my podcast and gone, oh, she just chats rubbish. And that's really important too. When you put yourself out there, you've just got to know that some people are going to go, I actually don't like you. And you actually want that. You want people to go, no, you're not for me. Because if people are doing that, it means that you are also calling out the people that are for you. But that's so hard because particularly as women, but just generally speaking, our brains are hardwired not to fail, not to have rejection, and to be part of the tribe and people please. What you've got to understand is when you just step into energetic alignment of where you're meant to be, what lights you up, that you just create your own tribe of people with a similar energy, similar vibe. That vibe attracts your tribe is a brilliant mantra. And I just want to, on that topic of mantras, just take Rachel's comment as sort of like the starting later today. So like Rachel was like, I don't have a question, but I just have a comment. Hi Rachel, Rachel's here, she's waving away. I listen each week and I really enjoy it, even though I have no intention of starting a yoga business and I only practice yoga very occasionally. I just absolutely love this, Rachel, because yeah, I've gone down the route with my podcast of being it's for yoga teachers, but it is actually the stuff I'm talking about is like, it is universal. And the yoga teachers here who perhaps have got some knowledge of Patanjali sutras or the Gita, the yoga philosophy, honestly, this ain't for yogis, this is for life. And it's the same in this podcast. So it isn't just for yoga teachers, it is literally for anyone who just wants a little bit of like, I can do this energy, because we all need that behind us. And Rachel really likes the mantras that we can apply to everyday life. And it is do what lights you up. And Rachel, I'm so pleased to hear that you are now trying to start restart a former interest. That is so, doing what lights us up in all aspects of our life are really important. And of course, there's some stuff, like the school run don't light me up. We've got some of our duties, some of our dharma, haven't we? But if we're always in that vibration, then it makes those jobs really hard to do. I know, for example, surfing lights me up, right? What has surfing got to do with my yoga business? Well, I'll tell you what, the more I surf, the more I make time within my schedule to surf, the more my yoga business grows. So if you want any example of how this is all interconnected, we separate, this is my work life, whether we're employed or self-employed, but this is my work life, this is my family life, and this is me. We separate these things, like we separate the human body, like this is the quadricep and this is the hamstring, and literally it's just everything is oneness. So if we're feeling energetically lit up in one area of our life, that ripples through into other areas of our life. So Rachel, thank you for being here today. Thank you for being the representative of the non-yoga community, non-yoga teacher community. You are most welcome. And also it just shows us all that this isn't just about our yoga business. This is beyond this. Like, yoga teachers, like we get people into our classes, right? And we're like, we're going to teach you a physical practice, right? You're like, come in. Yeah, it's just a bit of gentle bending and stretching, as my husband would say, right? Oh, no, it is so far much more than this. But we get you in with what you think you want, and then we tell you what you need. And it's kind of the same with this podcast here. I'm like, I'll tell you how to grow a, profitable, sustainable, impactful yoga business. And she keeps going on about energy, and she keeps going on about vibration. I want strategy. And I'm like, listen, strategies will mean nothing if the energy isn't aligned, if the energy isn't behind it. So Alison has got a great question for me. I'll summarize it, but it's really useful, this one, guys, particularly for those of you who, like me and like Alison, were teaching yoga before COVID lockdowns, because I think, Alison, the first thing I want to say is we have all been through a huge transition. And 3 years on, I think, well, I know this is me, we're still just coming to terms with that transition. So Alison's been teaching for 7 years. She has 2 children. Her husband works full-time and long hours. Yep, ditto, my husband's a school teacher. Alison has more animals than me. She's got a dog, 2 cats, and a chicken. I've just got a dog. But you know what the picture is, and this is a picture for so many women. We've got lots of hats. We're caring for children, we're caring for animals. We might also be caring for old elderly parents. And our husband or partner is also working, so we're just juggling everything. And yeah, like you, Alison, I'm an ex-school teacher as well, and that they are a good combination. Like, as a school teacher, we're pretty good at like getting a to-do list being actionable and getting through it and being very self-sufficient. It's the only way you survive in school teaching. And I also say, like, it's not a prerequisite that you need to have been in education to be a yoga teacher, but teaching is teaching, and like definitely one of your superpowers. And I think we must remember that when we put ourselves forward as a yoga teacher, we think, oh, I've done my 200 hours training. That's all I've done. Let's say, I know you've done more than that, Alison, but let's say that's it, right? And I'm like, hang on a minute, what other life experiences have you got? Like, so the fact that you are a trained school teacher, that must come into the mix when you're thinking about what it is I'm offering people and what my skill set is. And this goes if you've got other experiences, other life experiences, like pre and postnatal yoga. A lot of women have had children and had experiences of birth. And I'm like, look, this all comes into the mix. Like with my toddler yoga teaching, the fact that I've owned toddlers, it comes into the mix. We mustn't disregard our other experiences. We get a bit tunnel visioned into terms of like, oh, I'm a newly qualified yoga teacher, or I've only just done this, and you're not thinking wider. So once Alison went into lockdown, I love this, Alison, because I feel like maybe we were living a parallel universe life. You built built a garden office. I don't know if I sometimes appear in my garden office. This is where I work from home now. I have an online business now. I do tiny bit of training in person, but basically everything's online. And it's all done from my 3x3 meter garden office that my husband built. And just like you, it had stages. And just like you, it took so much longer than I expected. And it was hard work. Yeah. But, I get that feeling when we went into lockdown. I just wanted to never, ever, ever be dependent on a physical space again. You were working in studios. I actually owned my own studio. So Alison now has a garden yoga studio. Alison, you can nod. Was it 5 people you can get in? How many? Sorry, you can. Oh, 8. Ooh, it's way bigger than mine. So that's a good size. Okay, so Alison can teach 8 people from home. She's got a home studio, and I can see the way it evolved. Basically, we went into lockdown. She built the space in the garden. She had some regular students that wanted to carry on with her, and it kind of just evolved. And she's known these students for a very long time, and it's all been quite on the low down. And I can imagine, Alison, I've got a couple of people in my mentorship program who have home-based studios, and one of the things that comes up is, well, I don't need to charge a lot because I haven't got the rent of a studio. I haven't got the rent of a hall. Alison's nodding for those of you that can't see. And that's the first thing that comes off. And Alison has been teaching these regulars for 6-7 years now. Some of them, Alison, some of them drive 40 minutes. This is how good you are. This is how much they love you, right? They are driving for 40 minutes. And Alison's hit a point where she's like woken up to the idea that this isn't a hobby, that this is a business. And I get it. At first it's like, I'm just going, and it's quite a nice way to let things evolve without the pressure, without the stress. I'm going to build this, I'm going to let it evolve and let it go become this. I'm not going to put pressure on it. But you've hit a point now where you need to put in some boundaries into pricing. And it's so scary, this, because you're worried your current students are going to be put off by this. Now, I do just want to read this out, okay, so you can hear it and then hear my response. So the problem, my studio's in the garden and relatively small, so I can only fit a limited amount of people, 8. I'm going to say now 8's a good number actually for a home studio. It's become apparent I need to change the payment system to a block booking system, as when people miss a class, it's difficult to fill, so I lose out 100%. I'm toying with these two options. My question is to you: should I have a 2-tier paying system, block booking or drop in, or a 3-tier paying system, block booking the cheapest option, a class pass option, and a drop-in option? The first thing I'm going to say to you, Alison, is a confused mind says no. So option, the 3-tier system, rule it out. Like, this is a big cross. You are creating your self-admin with that as well. How, the class pass system, yes, you can use Bookwhen does this for you. You can use like booking systems to help you manage this, but it's confusing. Am I buying a pass? Am I buying a block? And then I would go to tier 1. And my only thing with the block booking is I think with 8 spaces, you will be at a place where those classes are full and that you will drop the drop in. So I would word it completely that, first of all, drop in available, space permitting, and drop in needs to be painful for your students to choose. So price wise, my class, so what Alison has done, and this is not a bad thing, she's looked at what yoga teachers around her charging and taken an average. What I would say with this, Alison, when you're looking at other yoga teachers and what they're charging, you're assuming they've got their money mindset issues sorted out. I would assume the opposite. Okay, like what happens if I led the way and charged a fair amount and helped all the other yoga teachers in my local area raise their prices? What happens if that was led by me? Okay, so she's charging my price, drop in £10, class pass £8.40, or 90 minutes, drop in £12, class pass £10. Right, here it is, Alison. You have a bespoke home yoga studio. You need to write that down. It's bespoke. You are teaching small, intimate classes. You need to write that down. Okay. This is your UPS. I'm not going to my local gym in a class with 20 plus people where there was a smelly Zumba class beforehand. I'm going to your rustic, because there might be spiders in it. That, yeah, I'm going to your rustic, charming yoga studio. There's going to be pictures on your website. Forgive me, I didn't have a chance to look at your website, sweetheart, but there's going to be pictures on your website of your studio, selling it as to what it is like, so I know what it is. If possible, pictures of your students there as well, so I can see what type of student that is going. So, because some people get a bit of a fear of going to a yoga studio, so if I can just see that everyone's normal and not like standing on one hand in a leotard, then that can help. But you definitely need to get right into the fact that you are offering people the opportunity to come to your house in a small, intimate class setting in a bespoke, self-built space. And that comes at a price. And with 8 spaces, you have not got the capacity to be really messing around. And I would 100% move to a block system where there's a start and an end date. I don't know if you do this already, but personally, with 2 kids, 1 dog, 2 cats, and a chicken, and a husband, I would also consider doing like I often teach within the term. So I would start, like, if I was you, I'd be tempted to start the second week in September, when the kids have gone back. You've given yourself a couple of days to get like, oh my God, the kids have gone back. Let me put my house back together. Then you start teaching. And I would teach in like half-termly blocks, which end up being between 5 and 7 weeks. There's a start date, there's an end date. This is how much the block costs. And if you want a place in my bespoke, rustic studio, intimate studio, where class numbers are kept small, so I can give you my personal attention, it will cost you X. And I'm just thinking, like, at the very least, you're probably going to have a bit of a wobble at this, but I think the block price should be £10. And I think the drop-in price should be around about 14, between 13 and 14. You're like, I can feel it, but like literally that's where you're aiming to go. Now, an aligned price is one we can get behind. So if that is just, I just can't do that, then I would consider moving to, say, like maybe your block price £9, drop in £12. That sounds quite nice. And drop in is space permitting. And you really need, because there's only 8 places. And then with your current students, this is never going to be easy. You're going to feel guilty, but you word it in a way that in order for me to, continue doing this, to serve you sustainably, I'll be moving to this pricing structure. Now, yes, some of your students, I don't think they will. I feel like you've got a really loyal tribe that probably behind the scenes are like, I really want to pay her more. Or I really think she should, like, maybe a few will drift off, but you want them to go. If they go, if you turn around to these people and say, look, for me to, it's no secret, there's a cost of living crisis, everything's costing more, right? Why should you be the one suffering? So in order for me to bring consistent income and cover my costs and ensure everyone has a place at class, I'm moving to a block system. There'll be a start and end date, and you need to book yourself onto the block. You can set it up like in Bookworm, for example, and there are other booking systems where people can start mid-block, but also there is drop-in, but drop-in is space permitting. And really you want to drive people to buy the block. And that higher drop-in price, £3-4 more, will drive people to the block. You don't want them to work it out that, oh, if that's a 6-week block, but if I actually do 5 drop-ins, it's the same price or cheaper. You've got to be careful with that. And you've just got to do it, and it's going to be like ripping off a plaster. You're going to feel horrible. Your brain's going to try and tell you to do it, stop it. But you have to think of your husband, think of your children, think of the animals, and think of you, and think, I deserve this. The other people, it can really help. If you're like, I deserve it, it's really hard for me to get my head around. What about your students? You will encourage consistent income in them and consistent attendance in them, and that's much better for them. I will give you an example of me. I have signed up to some evening swimming classes, and it's been a 10-week block. And it started back in April when the sea was cold and the weather was cold. And I was really up for going swimming in April and May. Just recently in Cornwall, summer has arrived. The sea is warm. There's been surf. But because I've paid up front, I've gone swimming. I went swimming last night, not surfing. And I am so glad I went, because my swimming has drastically improved. I am so glad of that payment structure that encouraged consistent income, consistent attendance for me. So your students benefit from this as well. It's just not your fault if their car breaks down. It's not your fault if they're ill, and it's not your fault if they're going on holiday. And they need to be in a place that if they want you to carry on, they know they have to book their spot. And there's only 8 spots anyway. So look at your timetable. And the other thing you can do is make sure you're not offering too many classes. Like sometimes we offer too many classes and we spread our numbers quite thin, and it can be a smart thing to do to see if, well, if I just reduce it by a couple of classes, and then I want to get myself to a place where the classes are full and there's waiting lists. Because what will happen then, you've got your first block, then you'll say to everyone in your current block, oh, booking for next term's up. I'll offer it to you first. You've got 7 days to book your space, and then it will go out to the public. You will find, Alison, that you're filling your classes. You won't even need to be on social media, and you're just filling your classes with your regular students, and you will get to that place. And the best time to put this change in is September. So you can make the plan for the change. You can warn your students. September, start of a term, you're off. And now I've told you that if you don't do it, you're just going to feel so painful that the only choice is to do it. So yeah, £9 drop in, and £9 in the block between 5 and 7 weeks, and then £12 drop in. Long term, I think you should be in the £10 mark for the block, and sort of like £13-14 drop in. But little bit at a time if it feels too much. But you remember, everyone, a confused mind says no. Alison, does that help? Yeah, okay. I'm going to check your website in August and track you down if you haven't made those changes. Okay, and look, just send yourself lots of love. I think I'm there as well. We're almost catching our tail in terms of my business has changed to this. Okay, so what boundaries, procedures, policies do I need to have in place in order to let this business run as it is now? Whereas like I just feel like you lockdown, we were like scrabbling around. Like I was scrabbling around setting up online business. I didn't have any idea what was going on. Like, and only now I'm stepping back and thinking, oh, maybe I should do this now. And I actually need this in order to run my business. So I think loads of us are there, and loads of teachers that have been teaching prior to COVID will sympathize with where you are. Okay, so Azora, who's not here, but is also on my pre and postnatal teacher training course, Hayley. She's kind of relates to yours, but it's different. She said, for people that work as yoga teachers in a part-time fashion, how can we manage our social media profiles? Is it better to create separate ones from personal other professions, not to give people different messaging or marketing offers? Or is it better to show everyone all the things we do? Or will this dilute our marketing messaging? Okay, so first thing, like it is really not uncommon for yoga teachers to work part-time. It's not that you can't make money as a full-time yoga teacher. I've been a full-time yoga teacher for over 11 years. So yeah, you can be full-time in your yoga business and that be your sole source of income. But it's very, very common for yoga teachers to have other streams of income. And let's face it, COVID taught us that multiple streams of income were not necessarily a bad idea. And also when we're starting out, and let's say you're starting out with the endeavor to be full-time in your yoga business, well, you know, there's one school of thought that says, give up your job and just step into where you're meant to be and all will work out. The other school of thought, which actually I adhere to, you give up your job, cause yourself a load of stress. All that stress creates resistance, and it will make growing your yoga business hard. So it's really, really nice to have the two running alongside each other and almost take off some pressure from earning on the yoga business. The only thing is I find with people that work in employment and then work part-time as a yoga teacher, they can be a little bit like, oh, the yoga teaching is just my hobby. It's not my business. And they're like all over the place when it comes to asking for money. And I had a lady in my mentorship program who was a bit like this. And literally, she just like after a month of being in the mentorship program was like, this is no longer a side hustle. This is also my part-time job. So it's very, very common for yoga teachers to be working part-time in employment elsewhere or have other modalities like massage, Reiki, to their bow. So like, I get this problem that people face. I would say if you are, let's say you're class yourself as a body worker, so you offer massage, you offer aromatherapy, you offer Reiki, you offer personal training, you offer Pilates, you teach yoga. This all is connected and can be under one roof. Okay, let's say I like to think of you as like a festival. So you are the festival, and within your festival there'll be separate tents, but they're all related, right? It's all music related. It's a music festival, right? There's all music going on in the tent. Whereas let's say you are a yoga teacher and a landscape gardener, right? Not beyond the realms of possibility. They are very, very different. And it would be quite hard to put both of those services out under the same festival. So like, let's say it would be like going to a music festival and there also being a craft fair. Yeah. Or going to a music festival and there also being a food festival going alongside it. It's a discord, it's a disconnect. The foodies are annoyed by the music, right? But the music festival, people are probably quite happy there's a food festival there, but you get the drift. So in that case, I would absolutely have different platforms to discuss stuff on. So I definitely would have your personal profile separate, particularly like it's not unusual. We were talking about Alison was an ex-school teacher, but there's a lot of yoga teachers who are school teachers, or I know yoga teachers who are also doctors and nurses working in professions such as the public sector. And I think we have to be careful when we're showing up in the public sector profession to how much we put out there, like my husband's a school teacher and he did for various reasons, but one of them because it's absolute nightmare navigating social media, he doesn't have a Facebook profile. so if you are a yoga teacher, I would definitely not be using and a school teacher, I wouldn't be using my personal profile, but I wouldn't be using my personal profile anyway. I would try and have a separation between my personal life and my professional life, whatever that is. And then I definitely would have different different outlets if they are very, very different. But it's a fine line juggling act between that and having, like, I wouldn't have more than 2 Instagram accounts, for example. Like, I don't actually, I only have 1 Instagram account. I only have I don't use my personal Instagram at all. I have a personal Facebook account, but I'm barely on it. And I just have my Amy Yoga Instagram, Amy Yoga Facebook page. You can't be on every platform as well. So yes, really, in Azora, in answer to your question, the answer is yes. Yeah, you're going to have you as the yoga teacher and then you elsewhere in your professional life. What's really interesting is also thinking about, where are my ideal clients hanging out? So Azora, you're going to have to forgive me. I know you very well, and I've completely forgotten what your other part-time job is. But let's say that you exist in that world where having a LinkedIn profile is a good idea, right? But then in your yoga world, having a Facebook, Instagram profile is a better idea. So there's also thinking about where people are hanging out as well. Or like, if you're teaching a demographic of people who aren't on Instagram, but they are on Facebook, Facebook's going to work really well for you. I've got a lady in my mentorship program who has a demographic that have home telephone numbers. So they're old. That's how she chats to them. She gives them a call, lets them know the next block is starting and how they could pay. I think some of them pay by check. Like, this still exists. And then I was chatting to someone yesterday, a guy actually, speaking to a man about yoga business now, a really lovely guy, who owns the yoga studio that I run my training from. And he started a broker group, and he was really struggling to just get this off the ground via Instagram. And also he had a website for the studio, but just like weren't getting the messages out to the blokes in Yuki. He started a WhatsApp group. He asked some of his mates whether they wanted to come. They brought in some of their mates. He's now got 12 people coming to broker because they were all able to just come onto the WhatsApp group. And I get that. Like, my husband really isn't in social media, but his friends are always chatting away in WhatsApp groups. So sometimes it's also just thinking about where my ideal client is hanging out. It's a very fine line between not creating a rod for your own back and having to like let's be honest, we don't want to be editing several websites and remembering to post content in several social media platforms. At the same time, it just may be necessary to have different hats if they're very, very separate. So there's Azora's answer. Ooh, I'm very proud of my timings. I was like, oh my God, I can't keep you on the call for hours. Right. So then the last question is Haley's, right? So Haley says, I'm trying to get more of an online presence. I don't feel many people are seeing my Facebook page and posts, for example, and I'm definitely not using Instagram. Right. Do you have any advice on how you have done it, or recommend any better ways to promote my online classes? Okay. So Haley, first of all, you can nod or unmute for this. Do you have a business Facebook profile? Yeah, Haley says yes. Do you have an Instagram account? And that is a business Instagram account? And have you done it that the two are connected? So if you post on Instagram, the post appears on Facebook? Okay. So first of all, you're already winning at life. So if you haven't done that, guys, go on YouTube, Google, how do I connect my Instagram business page to my Facebook business page? They've got to be business pages. And this is the thing with, like, if you don't have a business page, or I think you can have a creator page on Instagram, but if you don't have either of those two things, you can't access the data, the analytics. Now, when I say data, I get it. Like, I go cross-eyed and think, come on, I've trained to be a yoga teacher. What do you mean data? I got into this profession, so I didn't have to do maths, right? But data can be quite powerful, because we can hear in Haley's question, I don't feel many people are seeing my Facebook page. So when you say feel, Haley, have you looked at the statistics, or is it just a gut instinct divine? You can unmute or you can nod or put it in the chat. It's fine.
I just look at followers. I don't.
Okay, right. Thank you for sharing that. So followers don't tell you everything. So what you need to do is look at the data, the analytics on how many people have your insights. And on Instagram, you can see the, as long as you've got a business account, you can see insight data. And then on Facebook, I think it's in the business suite of face. I have to be honest, Facebook is always changing its mind and I find it quite hard to navigate, but you're looking to find the analytics, the data, because people outside of your page may have seen that post that, and actually not many of your followers have. That's really interesting as well. So, and like, we're all at the mercy of the algorithm. So metrics and vanity, none of us are into vanity metrics, but I get this when you think, well, I've only got 200 people on followers on Instagram or Facebook, what's the point? And I was like, actually, what matters actually is engagement. How many people are engaging in this, seeing this, commenting on it, sharing it, saving it? And you're like, it can feel like with in social media that you're just shouting into the void and no one's hearing you. Okay. Now, what I want you to know about social media is how short term it is. So I will post on social media. And if you imagine that post goes off into the I don't know where it goes, off into the world, it's kind of floating around for about 12 hours and then it just gets lost into the scroll. So anything I post has got like this 12-hour shelf. Like maybe reels are slightly different. Stories have got a 24-hour, like stories on Instagram have got a 24-hour life shelf anyway, which is why I really love stories, because like you can have lots of fun on stories and you can build relationships, but that's I like chatting and building relationships, so stories really work for me. Stories don't work for everyone. I know there's all these reel tactics, like all these way you can create reels and stuff like that, and I actually have a real rule that if it takes more than 10 minutes, I just step away from it. Honestly, I trained to be a yoga teacher, not to spend hours creating a reel. So again, there's smart ways that you can create reels. You can create reels by just using your photos and adding them in and adding some music to it. If you are happy to create a little video of you talking, that can be a really lovely way. If you don't like creating a video of you talking, here's one of my favorite ones. Two that have been really successful is I was teaching outside yoga and down overlooking the beautiful Cove of St Agnes. I look like a complete idiot, but I went with it. I filmed myself walking down to the beach to teach yoga. That literally was one of my most popular reels on that time lapse, so it was fast. And the other one that somebody loved that went really well once was I just filmed myself setting up a yoga class. Nobody was there, just filmed myself setting up a yoga class, and that created a reel. So it's just like social. If you think of social media as you being sociable, you are just sharing snippets of you in order to build a connection and a community with people. But literally, in terms of your marketing, aka talking to people, bringing them into your world, building relationship, and then at the end of that, marketing is the selling. The end of that conversation is, hey, well, now we know each other and now you know what I do. Do you want it? Right. At the end of that is selling. Social media is literally 10%, even on an online business. And like I say, if you're selling online offers, like I can give you examples of people who have online businesses who are on social media, but generally speaking, it's a bit of a given that you need to give a little bit of time to social media and you need to practice it. So you're kind of there because you've given your focus to your online presence. You've noticed, even if it was a feeling, that's fine. You've noticed that your posts aren't being seen. So you've got to go, okay, definition of madness is doing the same thing and hoping for a different result. So what do I do differently? What other things are available to me on this platform that is free, that I could sell, that I could build connection and therefore sell? So like, Facebook, I feel like Facebook is really good for local reach, actually. And Instagram, interestingly, is probably better. This is very, very general, better for sort of like creating community and connection with your audience. I would, if I was set, I'm not so good on Facebook because I get distracted. I log on and the next thing I know, I'm watching something about dog rescues, particularly as I've now found the Asher house and I'm slightly in love with this man and all of his dogs. But if I was going to use Facebook to sell my online offers, I would be tempted to create a closed group, a closed Facebook group. So it'd be like Yoga with Hayley, and they can come into it, and then from there give them some. You can't just set up a group and think, oh, I'll be able to sell. You've got to provide some value into that. Personally, for me, Hayley, you can nod. Do you have a website? Yeah, okay. And I go to your website. Am I invited onto your mailing list? Okay, right. So, oh, I know. Don't worry. I'll help you with this. You're in one of my courses. It would, like, honestly, there is a direct correlation between number of people you have in your mailing list and how many online offers you can sell. The online world, it's hard because it is a bit of a numbers game, and it can feel like I've got this great online offer and nobody wants it. To be honest, it can be true with your classes. I've got this great class in this great place. Why is no one coming? How many people know about it? So, Hayley, are you selling an online class or an online course or a membership? Do you mind me asking, sweetheart? It's just kind of.
It's classes and it's soon to be a course as well, personal development.
Okay. I mean, I love it. I mean, look, gold star emoji, right? For creating the pathway to like a scalable offer. This, and the bottom line is there's a finite amount of classes that we can teach a week. I'm going back to Alison. That's why Alison has got to make herself and is going to make herself like a higher ticket, like, special offer, special studio. But there is just a finite amount of classes that we can go and teach a week. And if we want to start to increase our income without having to teach more and more and more classes, we have to think about broadening our offers beyond classes, whether that's online or in person. So creating an online course and creating a program is great ways of doing it. But like, you've got to think of this like dating, right? You've gone on a blind date with someone. You don't say, hey, do you want to get married? Right? You've got to go on a date for a few times. You've got to get to know that person. So this comes through building a relationship with them, yes, on social media. And then just that is practice. It's like your mat. Show up, have a go. Like, if you think the thought of making a video makes you feel sick, do something else. And then, what happens if I did a quick video and stuck it in my stories of me chatting away about my new program? It's only in my stories, it's 24 hours. Like, it can take so much pressure off you when you're just using your stories. And then over time, you're like, actually, do you know what? It's not that bad. I don't care. I want people not to like me as much as they like me. So that can really help. There is some minimums that they say, like, I roll my eyes at this, but they do say that 3 times a week, posting 3 times a week onto that social media platform is like a good minimum. I have to say, I've got myself to a point where it's just like a little rhythm that I do most days. Like, I have to confess, it's like I often will be doing my stories in the toilet. It's busy. And then I'll be out and about walking the dog, and I'll be, oh, this will make a good video. And it takes me literally 2 minutes, and I put my phone away. I don't want to be on my phone forever, and I certainly don't want to see my kids see me on my phone forever. But it's just like, just integrating it a bit into my everyday life. A bit like our yoga practice, we do it on the mat, and then it comes off the mat, doesn't it? It becomes something we integrate into everyday life. But I definitely think for you need to have a think, and like, I can help you with this because you're on my training course about how can I build a mailing list. So when someone comes along to my website or looks at the links in Insta, I'm invited to their mailing list, which can just start off stage 1, just get it set up and say, join my mailing list for latest news and offers. Stage 2 is entice me onto your mailing list. So offer me something, which could be something for free. Like, let's say, and I'm like repurposing Queen. So let's say you've done an online class. You're like, that class was brilliant. I'm like, I do this. I thought it's a pretty good class. And I go and save it onto YouTube or Vimeo, like unlisted private. I forget about it, and 6 months later, I'm like, oh, that's really good. I'm going to offer this for free for people to join my mailing list. So like even like the podcast party, I guess probably no one's joined my mailing list. Like my podcast party very much went out to my current audience, but it's an example of a freebie that if someone did fall across my Instagram, may have chosen to sign up to it, and now they've come onto my list. Then the third and final way actually is to make a low cost offer. So let's say your program is a higher cost offer. I'm not sure what let's just imagine it is £600. And I look at that and think, oh, I'm quite interested. It is what I need. Don't yet know Hayley. Oh, she's got this shorter course for £29. That just seems very low risk. I'll join that. That brings them into your world. That brings you some money into your world and brings them onto your list. So you've got to be in for the long game, Hayley, on the online world, but you're in it because you're creating offers. And this question that you've asked me says you're kind of at the next stage, which I get this stage, which is like, okay, I'm creating this stuff. How the hell do I sell it? And I don't think this is said enough, right? It's so much easier, and I'm not saying it's easy, but it's so much easier to locally go down to the local village hall, think, well, I've got to get 10 people to this class on a Monday night. That is so much easier to do than to create an online program and say, okay, I'm going to get 10 people onto this online program. You know, you need to, like, your net has to be cast so much wider in order to find those 10 people, because I likened it the other day to like in that the local class would be like almost like a goldfish swimming around a goldfish bowl or a tank. The online world is like we're a fish swimming in a sea. What it really helps us when we're swimming in the sea of the online world is getting super niche. Like, who is this program for? Who's my ideal client? And call them out. And your website is going to really help you with that, because like not only have we talked about inviting people onto your mailing list, and you can do that through social media as well, but also like, how am I going to find you? Search engine optimization. Like, you create your online offer, it comes back to create your online offer, like no one's buying it. Go onto the website, go onto the analytics of your website. How many people have seen that sales page? Because if it's like, oh, it's 10, I was like, well, no wonder no one's bought it yet. You know, so then you're like, so whatever it is you're selling, what might it be that people are searching for when they're selling that? And then you start to think about that within your copy. So we help Google find it. Or I can give you an example. I'm not going to be rubbish at giving you like a personal development example, but let's say it is let's say it's like you wanted to create like a pregnancy yoga and hypnobirthing course, an online course. But I'd be like, okay, like that, like there are lots of those out there. So we could go, oh my God, right, I better not create a pregnancy and hypnobirthing course because there's so much out there. I'm like, oh, no. There's so much out there because it's so sellable. The only thing you've got to navigate with this is getting the eyes on the prize, getting people to see it, because there's so much out there. So you might write, oh, I might have a blog post like the benefits of hypnobirthing in labor. So then when someone Googles benefits of hypnobirthing labor, your blog gets found higher up and people then find you that way. But it's like step by step by step. So you've just got to commit to the long game and think, first thing I've got to do is decide how to set up my mailing list and invite people onto it. That's stage one. And then make my endeavors to grow it. At the same time, I'm going to finish by saying, I've done the festival example, Instagram / Facebook, it's my party invitation. Okay. And I just go on there and have some fun, invite people to my party, completely non-attached. I play around with what works for me. I play around with, all right, what gets engagement. But what's really, really interesting is what works for me gets engagement. The energy always leads. So if I tell you, right, you need to do a reel like this, and you're like, oh my God, I absolutely hate this. And you do the reel, and the energy behind this is, oh God, this is awful. And Amy told me to do this, so I better do it. You are never going to get in good engagement in that reel. If you're like, la, 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 this is my party and I love to be nice. Even if it's just snapping the flowers in your garden. Alison, I'll tell you what, dogs, cats and chickens, all over social media. Right, animals go well. Then if the energy behind it is authentically you, then your engagement will grow. All right, Hayley. But I can help you with that because you're on my program. You're on my pre and postnatal teacher training course. There's a bit of one-to-one in all of that. So I'll help you with all of this because it can feel like a different language, can't it? But it's not. Like, what was it? Denise Duffield Thomas, who's a brilliant money mindset mentor, she said, mindset is everything. The rest can be Googled. You can Google the answers to all of this stuff. There are YouTube videos for all of this stuff. Just need to set aside a bit of time to research it and decide what will work for you. All right, my darlings, I've done it. About 50 minutes. I won't make it any longer because no one will listen to it. Thank you so much for joining me live. It's been a real pleasure to have you in my cupboard with the drawings from my little daughter. I really do appreciate all of you listening and all of your questions that you've given me today, but also just generally just listening and supporting me. I'll do this thing, just tell your mates. This is the last thing I'm going to say. Like, your biggest people who can do the marketing for you are the people who are already in your community. So tell all your friends, yoga teachers, Pilates teachers, your neighbor, the postman. I've got this great podcast. You know, this is how you will grow your business, by asking your current students to also help you. So I will ask you one more time to just do anyone you know, just anyone you know, anyone you know who could listen to the podcast, please share it. Otherwise, my lovelies, I will see you all next week with my podcast. And thank you so much for coming live. Thank you, guys. Bye. Bye, everyone. Bye. Bye.